right, guys. I just want to welcome everyone to our first Great Book Club, and I'm just really thrilled to be doing this. As some of you who were on earlier heard, I think I've already experienced the value this week of reading and rereading this book while working on a different project to really put those lessons into action. And that is my biggest goal for this Great Books Club, is that as we go through these classics of direct marketing and sales and persuasion, that you leave each call with a really deep grasp of the benefits and the copywriting lessons that you can find in each of these books and apply them in a practical way to actually make not only your copy better, but as we were talking earlier, for this book especially, make your whole life better. So I am super excited that we are starting with How to Win Friends and Influence People, and I'm really thrilled to have as my guests today Katie Yeakle and Rebecca Matter. And when I first suggested starting with this book, Katie just lit up like a Christmas tree and said how much that you've always loved and enjoyed this book, and I feel the same way. And Rebecca, I can tell you were excited to read it again. So
absolutely.
Without further ado, let's get going. As some of you know, Dale Carnegie is famous, obviously, for teaching his public speaking courses. But what I didn't know is that the way that this sort of came about was that during one of his courses on public speaking, he ran out of material during the class and suggested that his students use the time to speak about something that made them angry. And so you can imagine what happened when he let loose their inner passions, right, in their voice. And so what I love about this is it's not just about public speaking, it's not just about self-improvement, it's sort of about these fundamental life lessons that apply not only to our copy when we're addressing other people, but to ourselves and to our own lives. And so I think this is a really great book to kick us off, and loaded with lots of great copy lessons. As Katie said earlier, this was first published in 1936, and so it makes the language and some of the sayings sound a bit dated to us. But to me, I agree with Katie. I think that's a lot of its charm. It's one of the best-selling self-help books ever published, sold over 15 million copies worldwide. And I think a testament to its staying power is the fact that you'll see the edition that we're using today, and all the page numbers referenced here are from the 70th anniversary edition, and there's very few self-help books that have that kind of staying power. So I think that sort of speaks for itself. Today what I'm going to do is try to give you 10 lessons that copywriters can learn from Dale Carnegie. And Katie is right. There's probably 75 lessons that I had lined up, and she tried to rein me in.
I tried.
You tried. I think you said 3 to 5, and I could only get it down to 10. So
I agree. It would have been impossible to I mean, it is hard to, there are so many, but you did great.
So if we don't get through all of them today, or if I go through slides really quickly, you can still go back and keep the PowerPoint as a way to remind yourself of other lessons, and there's so many. So this is just sort of, think of this as a quick flyover of the book, and you'll definitely want to go back and spend more time delving deeper and finding even more lessons of your own. And those of you who participated in the Facebook, when I ask for favorite quotes, you'll see a lot of your quotes appearing. And because my type is about 3-point size here, if I forget to recognize who posted that quote, please forgive me. But know that I was really thrilled to have you guys engaging, and hope that we'll do that going forward on the Facebook page too, because I really want this to be something we all share and enjoy together. So the first lesson that I want to talk about, that I think is one of the reasons that this book is so easy to read and fun and enjoyable, is because it's just story after story after story. And he does, like, how can you not keep reading, right? Like, he hooks you at the beginning. And to me, this is a great reminder of not only the power of stories in copy to pull your reader in, but the power of stories to motivate us with a lesson, which something that we remember and stays with us. So I'm going to talk about my favorite story, and then I'm going to ask Katie and or Rebecca both to jump in and tell me one that stayed with you. I know the one that stayed with me the most was this one, right? And you guys will remember this from the book. So Bob Hoover, a famous test pilot and frequent performer at air shows, the story he tells is how this man is flying, this test pilot's flying back this plane from an air show in Los Angeles. They're about 300 feet in the air, and both engines stop. So, of course, he's already got our attention, right? And then he manages to land this plane, but the plane is very damaged, although, fortunately, nobody's injured, right? And so Bob Hoover gets out of the plane, and he goes to look at the fuel, and it turns out that the guy who has fueled his plane, this stunt plane, World War II propeller plane, had put jet fuel in rather than gasoline, and that's what had caused the crash. And so when they get back to the airport, of course, he asks to see the mechanic who serviced the plane, and at this point, you're just imagining that this guy's going to go up and just, you know, rip this kid apart, you know, and it's what anyone's natural reaction would be because he almost died and it almost killed everyone with him. So he says, as he's walking towards him, right, the young man was sick with the agony of his mistake. Tears streamed down his face as Hoover approached. But Hoover didn't scold the mechanic. He didn't even criticize him. Instead, he put his big arm around the man's shoulder and said, to show you how sure I am that you'll never do this again, I want you to service my F-51 tomorrow. And to me, that story stayed with me more than anything else, I think, one, because of the drama, and two, because it was just such a poignant way of driving home that fact that, you know, there's so many times in our lives when criticism seems like it's the easy and automatic reaction, and instead, in this story, when he has every reason to criticize, he doesn't. He puts his arm around the kid and encourages him and trusts him. So that's my favorite. And Katie, I thought maybe you or Rebecca would want to chime in and tell me one of the stories.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I mean, it is a very difficult choice. We have a, yeah, but I would have to say, I think my favorite is, it's on page 66 of the version, the 70-year version that we have, the special anniversary edition. And it's about Bill Steinhardt and how he learns to smile and what that does for his home life, how it affects his wife and his children. And I just thought that was such a powerful lesson, too, and something that people often take for granted or just don't do enough of. And that really made a impact on me. And again, just the way that Dale talks about it. You know, I've been married for over 18 years, wrote Mr. Steinhardt, and in all that time, I seldom smiled at my wife or spoke 24 words to her from the time I got up until I was ready to leave for business. I was one of the worst grouchos who ever walked down Broadway. When you asked me to, you know, and when you asked me to make a talk about my experience with smiles, I thought I would try it for a week. So the next morning, when combing my hair, I looked at my glum mug in the mirror and said to myself, Bill, you're going to wipe the scowl off that sourpuss of yours today. You are going to smile, and you're going to begin right now. As I sat down to breakfast, I greeted my wife with a good morning, my dear, and smiled. You warned me that she might be surprised. Well, you underestimated her reaction. She was bewildered. She was shocked, you know, and it just goes on. I mean, it's just such a beautiful story. And then, you know, I soon found everyone smiling back at me, and just
I love it.
Impact.
It's so good. And
that,
you know,
oh, go on.
Well, I was going to say one thing that I really love about this is on the very next page, he brings up this lesson that Rebecca talked about when we were first starting the call, this idea of smiling when you write copy. And, you know, he says, action seems to follow feeling. He's quoting actually William James, a psychologist. He says, action seems to follow feeling, but really action and feeling go together. And by regulating the action, which is under more of our control, we can indirectly regulate the feeling. So in other words, you know, when you sit down to write copy, you might not be feeling filled with joy and enthusiasm. You might be nervous, you might be hearing the critic in your mind, you might be anxious, right? But that act of just smiling automatically begins to change your feelings. I have a friend who says you can't feel your way into new actions, you have to act your way into new feelings. And to me, that's what the smile is doing, right? You're like acting joyful and happy and excited to be writing. And how could that not come through in your copy, you know? I love that you picked that story. I think that's terrific. And that's one of my favorite, too.
I just one comment on that. I'm a natural smiler, so I get the power of a smile. And when I managed a sales team early on in my career, I actually put mirrors in all of their cubes and told them to look in the mirror when they were talking. And they naturally smiled, and it helped the sales result.
Wow.
And I had gotten it from someone else, the idea from someone else, but it really helped them close more sales because they were being what sounded to be, they were just more genuine. They were more happy on the phone, and they were engaging basically with themselves in a mirror. But it was a positive experience all around.
And I think that cannot help but, add enthusiasm to your copy. So I realize it seems like so simple, right? Oh, smile when I write copy. But look at the dramatic experience this man had in his life just by doing this one simple action. And I think the same is true when using this to write copy. There's sort of a related point here that I wanted to bring up that relates to the stories, which is, when you read this book, right, you believe these stories. They're about real people. They're stories from people in his class or from history or from biographies he's read. And so one thing that I was thinking about on what I was calling sort of the meta level, like not just the content of the book, but how he wrote the book, is how could I use this to improve the testimonials that I write by turning them into these rich descriptive stories of real people. And I know there's those of you out there who are totally legitimately saying right now, there's all these rules about testimonials and you have to say this and that and the other thing. And your clients definitely have certain ways that they do testimonials. I'm not arguing that you don't follow those, but what I'm saying is, instead of someone saying, yeah, I liked the soap, right, or whatever, just the way that he goes about it, these are just a few that I pulled. I mean, there's one on every page, right? So Pamela Dunham of New Fairfield, Connecticut, had among her responsibilities on her job the supervision of a janitor who was doing a very poor job. Like right there's a mini story. You got to find out what's going to happen to the poor janitor and what's going on, right? Or, even the specificity of Warwick, Rhode Island, who is a territory salesman for the Shell Oil Company. So again, I think we can take these stories and not only see how we can use stories to infuse our copy, but also how can we then make our testimonials richer based on that. So now I want to spend a lot of time on the call talking about what I think is one of the key lessons of the book, and we've talked about this before, which is this idea that how you give and receive feedback makes all the difference in the world. So the quote that I pulled that really stuck out for me was, an animal rewarded for good behavior will learn much more rapidly and retain what it learns far more effectively than an animal punished for bad behavior. And then I love this one. Criticism is futile because it puts a person on the defensive and usually makes him strive to justify himself. Criticism is dangerous because it wounds a person's precious pride and hurts his sense of importance and arouses resentment. Rebecca, again, I think I'm asking either you and or Katie, but I think I was asking you to take the lead on this one, to talk a little bit about criticism, both your experiences of giving and receiving it, because all of us as copywriters live in this world where we're going to be receiving criticism pretty regularly, and unfortunately not all of our mentors have read this book, let me just say.
I'll definitely talk about this, because just starting with AWI, I've been here for 10 years, but I was in publishing and marketing before that, so I have seen criticism gone wrong. I've received negative criticism, not necessarily criticism that got us towards the common goal. And I believe that's why, Mark, or as many of you know, Mark Ford and Michael Masterson created the peer-reviewed system. And I see this work on a regular basis. For those of you who aren't familiar, when we review copy at AWAI, we're not able to criticize it as the marketers and as other copywriters. we have to speak in the form of copy suggestions. Because at the end of the day, our goal is the same, and that's to make the copy stronger. You know, we want it, the copywriter wants it, it's in everybody's best interest to mail the best copy possible. Our end goal is the same. And so by doing this, he kind of allows us to he allows us to help the copywriter make the copy stronger without criticizing it. So by offering up suggestions instead, and by allowing everyone to respond to the copy that's being suggested as being stronger, weaker, or neutral to the original copy, the copywriter can focus 100% of his attention on the goal of improving the copy, rather than defending why he did what he did. And so now I get that. You know, I knew that was part of the reason why we use peer review, because I've been in those situations where boss number one criticizes my work about this. He wants it to be better, but all I hear is a bunch of criticism. Boss number two criticizes me on the changes that I made because boss number one told me to make them. So now I'm feeling, not only am I feeling bad because boss number one just beat up on me, but now I tried to fix it, and boss number two just beat up on me. And it just ends
and you're running around in circles.
And what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to make it better? So not only is it important to, I think peer review helps us learn how to give. So I've become better at helping copywriters write better copy because of this system. But I think as far as our copywriters go, and copywriters in general, teaching your clients how to provide constructive feedback can be a very positive experience for everybody, because I think it helps them feel part of the process. It helps them identify what it is that they're not liking about the copy, and it could just be that they gave you bad information or they really weren't involved at the beginning, and now they need to be, and it just gives them a process to help them give you the information that you need and give you the, not criticism, but the feedback that you need to make the copy even stronger. And so for those of you who aren't familiar, I highly recommend going to the AWI website and looking up peer review. It walks you through the process, and it's a great way to get around this criticism thing. And Marcella, if I can make one more point, just from a mom reading this and a wife.
Oh, yes.
I want to make one other comment about criticism that was very interesting to me but I feel like I have learned to become a better manager because of this book and because of peer review from the last time I read the book. At this time, for those of you who have other people that you communicate with in your life, like my husband and my kids, I just found out like everyone's going to be a lot happier because I read this book, because learning, figuring out why my kids are doing something or not doing something, or why my husband is doing something or not doing something, and taking the time to figure out what would motivate them to do what I want them to do, I think it'll make everybody happier and minimize frustrations, but it also makes me stop for a second. And I think you're less likely to get caught up in arguments, which I know we're going to talk about later, but by taking a step back and figuring out what is it that I want, and how can I get this person to also want what I want? What is it they want? I think it just helps eliminate the need for criticism. So,
I agree, and I think that's one of the, as a mom, it just resonated so deeply with me. And as someone who has been really blessed to have a lot of copywriting mentors in my career, it really resonated with me. And I love your idea of trying to help your clients find a way to give criticism and feedback that then gets the ultimate goal that everybody has, which is the best copy, the best product possible. I'll share just 2 examples where I had conversations, pretty deep conversations about criticism with mentors of mine. The first was one where one of my mentors said to me, he had given me a really intensive critique of a piece of copy, and it was just brutal. And he had wanted it back the next morning, and it was, I was late with it, and he called me and he's like, "Where is it?" And I said, I have to tell you that when we finish those calls, I just want to crawl under my desk and suck my thumb and cry for about a day before I can even get up the energy. I just think, oh, this is terrible. Why bother? I'm so, and he said to me, oh my gosh, I've been criticizing you the wrong way. I've been demotivating you. He goes, for me, when someone does that, my reaction is, I'll show you, and I just can't wait to get back to it and, make it better and send it back. And I'm like, no, I'm still under the desk with the thumb in my mouth and a bottle of bourbon. So he had this like aha moment. He's like, so that demotivates you? I'm like, yes. And then he really consciously tried to change how he gave me feedback. And just, he wasn't upset. It wasn't like he was like, what do you mean? It was like, just like what you said, right? He like had this realization that we both wanted to get to the goal, which was getting to the best copy possible fastest. And with me, you know, crying under my desk with a bottle of bourbon, we weren't going to get there. And so, you know, he totally changed and tried to make sure to say positive things. I mean, he was really sweet. He said, well, if I said all the good things, we wouldn't even have time for the criticism. And I'm just, you know, like really focused. I only have 10 minutes and I got to tell you what to fix. But everything I don't say is great.
I think you made a good point too there. Just for those of you who do fear criticism, and when you submit to the marketer, if they're going to, you know, expect criticism. And I know we're teaching that you shouldn't criticize, but they might have not read this book. And the best thing that you can do in that is send them a copy of the book. But help them
highlighted pages.
Help them communicate. You know, ask them the questions that you need to answer in order to improve the work. And just remember that the end goal is the same. You want the copy to do well, and so do they. And they just might have trouble communicating it in a way that motivates you. But know that criticism is going to happen. You know, it's just part of this. I used to have this boss who used to say to me, Rebecca, before you pick up the phone, I need you to be like Teflon. I need you to just roll right off you. Nothing can stick. You know, don't
right,
criticism inside, because it's not a personal thing. It's just about something that you wrote. And copy is very subjective. You know, all three of us could read. This is another reason why peer review is so good. All three of us could read the exact same piece of copy and have different feelings about how we think it's going to do and how it could be improved. So know that there's a really good chance that everything that you write, somebody can criticize it. And that goes for everyone. We have reviewed Mark Ford's books, Bob Wise promos, Paul Hollingshead, Marcella. I mean, everybody's copy gets reviewed. Everybody's copy gets feedback, and it can always be improved. So don't fear it.
And
I had a really
go
ahead, Katie.
I just wanted to add one thing to it. I mean, not only don't fear it, but embrace it, welcome it. These are all learning lessons. And, you know, 99% of the time, your copy is going to be better. So, you know, really be open to getting the value and the nuggets and the gems out of it.
I had that completely driven home to me last week in this amazing experience, which is that one of the A-list writers that I work with turned in some copy to a very significant client of both of ours. This was something that he had worked on his own, and the client looked at his copy and actually said to him, now I've trained with him, right, and actually said to this person, you know, it's kind of dry and a little flat. Would you call Marcella and see if she could give you some ideas on how to add energy to the copy? And he did, and this person sent it to me, and we went through it, and I gave lots of suggestions. Not only was he like totally thrilled and gracious and open and like saying things like, oh my God, that's brilliant, and I can't believe I didn't think of that, and this is terrific, and thank you. And when he hung up the phone, I sat there for a minute, and then I wrote him this email, and I said, you know, this is the most important lesson you have ever taught me by your example, because if I had someone that I had been training and my biggest client had called me and said, go talk to the person you've been training and ask them for advice on how to fix your copy, I would have been mortified. I would have been embarrassed. I would have told myself I wasn't good enough. I would have crawled back under the desk with a bottle of bourbon. And I don't know that I would have been gracious and open. And I just emailed him and said, this is the most important thing you ever could have taught me by your actions and how you handled this. And what he said back to me was exactly what you said, Katie. He goes, all I want is the best copy. All I want is the best possible product for my client and the best royalty stream possible from it, you know? And it was just, I will never forget that now, just his example of how open and excited he was to get feedback.
Great. All right, let's move on to number 3.
So this one we talk about all the time, and we talked about this a little bit on the beginning of the call, which is talk in terms of the other person's interests. I know you guys have seen this before too. I cannot tell you how many times I have seen someone saying, our company does this, our product does this, we're the best in this. And, you know, at AWAI, we teach all the time, you've got to be answering the question, what is in it for your prospect? And Katie, I love that you put this one in, this quote, and it's one of my favorites too. If as a result of reading this book you get only one thing, and that is a tendency to think always in terms of the other person's point of view, it may easily prove to be one of the most important stepping stones of your career. And that orientation towards your prospect is critical. But again, as this next quote points out, and I think this came from one of our web participants, be sincere. Do not promise anything that you cannot deliver. Forget the benefits to yourself and concentrate the benefits on the other person. And again, I think that sincerity comes through. You can't fake that. And this is an example of one of his sort of little metaphors in print that I loved, and it was just such a great way to drive home that point to me, and I carry this in my mind. He says, I often went fishing up in Maine during the summer. Personally, I am very fond of strawberries and cream, but I have found that for some strange reason, fish prefer worms. So when I went fishing, I didn't think about what I wanted. I thought about what they wanted. I didn't bait the hook with strawberries and cream. Rather, I dangled a worm or a grasshopper in front of the fish and said, wouldn't you like to have that? Why not use the same common sense when fishing for people? So to me, I just hold on to that reminder, am I baiting my hook with worms or with strawberries and cream? And so just remembering that what you have to put on your hook is what the prospect wants, not your favorite thing. I love this one. Genuinely care about your prospect and be interested in them, and it will come through in the copy. And I think that relates to that idea of sincerity and caring about the other person and the desire to be appreciated and seen for your value as a person. And this is just terrific. I love this one. You can make more friends in 2 months by becoming interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to get other people interested in you. This is another example of how he teaches, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, but how he teaches in metaphors all the time. And these stories stay with you, right? So in this case, he's talking about a magician who went onto the stage and said, look, there's other magicians. And in some ways, I think we're all magicians. We're using our words as skills to sell things. And the one says, many magicians would look at the audience and say to themselves, well, there's a bunch of suckers out there. But Thurston's method was different. He told me that every time he went on stage, he said to himself, I am grateful because these people come to see me. They make it possible for me to make my living in a very agreeable way. I'm going to give them the very best I possibly can. And I think sometimes copywriters get too focused on making the sale or selling the person, and they forget that really we are appreciating them and solving a problem for them and giving them something that they need. And we are grateful not only for our clients but for the ultimate customers because they're the ones who make it possible for us to make our living as writers. You want to say anything about that, Katie or Rebecca? Just briefly?
It's so beautifully said. I don't know anything that I could add to it other than, it's the golden rule. You treat others the way you want to be treated, and right, you put their interests first.
I know. I will say as a client of AWAI, I have always felt that. I will just say that from AWAI, that I was never just a number. I was always a person and someone whose success you were so vested in. And for me, that's made all the difference.
It's true.
It's really made all the difference. Here's a little, I'm going to go through some of these quickly. Here's a tip for you guys to try in your copywriting that one of my mentors taught me many years ago, which is it's often a really great idea to give your prospect a little thing they can do, a little trick, a little lesson, something tangible that they remember and take away. Like the example on our call is to tell you to smile when you write your copy. So that's like a little simple takeaway that stays with you. And this book is filled with them. So I think this is something you can incorporate into your copy. So The smile is one example. This is another one to help people remember, right, not to chastise and criticize. After he talks about Abraham Lincoln and all the things from his autobiography and biographies that he's read, he says, the next time we are tempted to admonish somebody, let us pull a $5 bill out of our pocket, look at Lincoln's picture on the bill, and ask, how would Lincoln handle this problem if he had it? So now he's given you a little tangible reminder, and I think that's a great idea to try to add to copy if it fits what you're working on. This is, again, related to the stories that we have been talking about so much, which is that Carnegie is a master of metaphor and simile, and these are just some of my favorites, right? Flattery is counterfeit, and like counterfeit money, it will eventually get you into trouble if you pass it on to somebody else. Here was another one I loved. It is always easier to listen to unpleasant things after we have heard some praise of our good points. A barber lathers a man before he shaves him. You know who's a master of this is Clayton Makepeace. The man just speaks in metaphors, right? And he's going to be on our call next month, and I think that's one of the best ways that he gets energy and emotion into his copy is speaking in metaphors. He critiqued a piece of mine this week, and he used the phrase in his critique. He said, you need to make them understand that good stock picking programs are as rare as hen's teeth. Okay, I think, Rebecca, you were mentioning a little bit earlier, if I remember, about not arguing with your prospect, not arguing with someone who's trying to give you criticism. And I also would say don't try to argue your prospect out of a long-held belief. I think probably for your point of view, if someone absolutely hates writing, it's brutal, it's painful, they've always detested it, they've never wanted to write as a kid, trying to convince them that they will love writing is not going to work.
No.
You know, that's not your audience, right? That's a deep-held belief of them. If they're terrified of writing, then probably they don't want to become a copywriter.
No, for sure. And AWI is not in the business of converting people into writers. We're in the business of helping people who want to write become successful.
And that's such a huge difference, isn't it?
Absolutely. It makes our job very easy as well.
No, but I think too many times we try to convince people who aren't our prospect that they should really buy this thing. But they're not the prospect.
Absolutely. But even also with talking with clients, when you do receive criticism on your copy, or they want to take it in a different direction, or they told you one thing and now they're changing it, avoid that argument at all costs, because all it does is put them on the defense and hurts that relationship between you. It's just, like he says, if you can avoid these arguments, it will serve you well in your career. You don't want to get into an argument with why this copy should go this way or why you have it that way. Because at the end of the day, you're not going to be sitting there with the prospect reading the letter to them and explaining to them why it is the way it is. So it's best not to try to defend your points. If someone doesn't agree that it's the right way of doing it, you know, you can always say, let's just test it. If, you know, you're probably right, but let's go ahead and test it and get some data so we can make sure that we're knocking stuff off that, you know, should be changed. But whenever possible, just avoid arguments at all costs.
Like rattlesnakes and earthquakes, as he says.
Exactly, exactly. And I'm going to actually put that one above my desk for my personal life as well. No more arguments. I'm going to avoid them at all costs.
And you know, Marcella, Dale has another quote. I'm not sure what page it's from, but I think this is so true, and this is something that has stuck with me. 9 times out of 10, an argument ends with each of the contestants more firmly convinced than ever that he is absolutely right. And if you think of any political conversation you've had over Thanksgiving dinner, you know, that's it.
That's it. And that is definitely not what you want to make the prospect feel. I remember Mark talking about that, how it just immediately brings up their defenses. You know, they put up a wall. Number 8, how to get your clients, traders, gurus, doctors, experts to talk to you. Oftentimes when we start on a project, the thing that we have to do is interview the people who are the closest and involved with the product. And they're the ones that you need to get their stories from. They're the ones who know the product. They're passionate about the product. And so I think as copywriters, one of the things that we need to strive to be is to be attentive listeners, to be interested, to ask questions, to encourage these people, whether it's we're interviewing a potential prospect to get an idea of the mind of our prospect, or our client, we're interviewing them about the product itself, or a doctor about a supplement, to get them engaged in talking about this. And I know this is one of the goals I have this year personally, is to become a better listener, because I can talk a mile a minute and my brain's going and I'm jumping in with ideas. And David, one of my mentors, has been just amazing at trying to coach me when we're in meetings together with sort of the silent kick in the shins, you know, to like wait and let the prospect or the client tell me what's amazing about this product. Is there anything that you guys wanted to add to that, or any comments on that idea?
Just listening in general, I think that's definitely one of the biggest takeaways. I'm guilty of that as well. I get very excited about things and I start talking. And I think that if you come to a meeting with a client really with the intention of learning what is in it, like what do they need out of this, what do they feel their best, the product, how do they feel the product is the best, who is the prospect, all that stuff without your assumptions. Don't even put your assumptions on the table. Listen to them first. And then if any of them are different than your assumptions, then ask more questions to figure out why maybe you missed the mark or couldn't see ahead of time what it is that they're saying they feel is the most important. But I do think it's so important to figure out what the client thinks, because that's going to go really far in when you submit your copy, making sure that you're on the same page. So don't assume that you know the answers, basically, and listen.
That's brilliant. And, you know, I can't remember who is it who, Katie, you may remember. I remember years ago someone at boot camp talking about how some of his best copy was written simply by taking a tape recorder with him to these meetings, and that before he knew it, the client had basically dictated to him half the copy, especially if, like, the client has a trading service and they're a trader and they're excited and they get going, you know?
Oh my gosh, if you ever have a meeting, for those of you copywriters out there who might work for AWI, if you have a meeting with Mark Ford, bring a copy, bring some kind of
tape recorder.
Because he literally speaks in headline and leave. He'll get started and all of a sudden the copy will just come out of his mouth.
And then he doesn't remember it once it's said. He's like, I don't know, it's gone. It's gone. But that's true for just the tidbits and picking up the actual timing and rhythm and phrasing is so so valuable, and not to be overlooked how valuable that is.
Yeah, because, you know, if you're not, like, I write copy about stock traders, but I'm not an active in the market every day stock trader. And so, like you said, just getting them rolling and speaking in their own language, or if I'm writing on a health piece, I might not suffer from, you know, arthritis. And having someone speaking about what that's like, you're going to hear like those phrases, their experience, their words, and that's just going to infuse your copy. Absolutely. So number 9, this is one that I struggle so hard with. And, of course, I read the chapter about how vital this is, and I'm like, oh, I've really got to get better. The power of a name. Jim Farley discovered early in life that the average person is more interested in his or her own name than in all the other names on earth put together. And I made a glaring mistake at Clayton's conference in calling someone the wrong name, and I was absolutely mortified. And I struggle with this all the time. So I put in a question to Katie to say, is there anything, I know that you guys, I don't know how you do it. You always remember people's names. You're so welcoming. I'm like,
well, it's all people do wear name tags.
But no, Denise is the master of this. And
yes, she
so many
is.
with her, and everybody who walks up to the table, She knows every single person for the rest of the event just after registration, by name. It's amazing.
I know it.
It's fantastic at it. I always work to get better at it, but I'm nowhere near as good as the master, and that's Denise.
That's Denise. You know, one thing I'm doing, and I'm not ashamed to admit it, is Lumosity. It's like a brain game thing. I actually learned about it from Mark Ford, and they have one of their games. It's so great. It simulates like you're a waitress and you're at a cafe or a bar, and they have all these different people pop up, and you have to remember their names and you have to remember their orders. And, you know, I mean,
oh my God, that's great. Will you say it again slowly, because I couldn't, or spell it out for us?
Lumosity.
I'll message it to everybody. LUMOSITY.com. And anyway, I mean, that's just one. They have a bunch of different word games and brain teaser games, but I think it's something you have to work at. I don't think.
So you're a waitress and you have to remember the whole order in the game.
Oh yeah, and they have like, you know, one person pops up, and then three others, and then you have to remember the first person's order, then the third person's, and then the first person's asking for the check, and you have to say, here you go, Jim. And over the course of weeks, you see the same people, and you're expected to remember. And I've made up games. Okay, one girl's Kelly, and she has on a green sweater, so okay, Kelly Green. You know, I mean, it's like all that kind of silly stuff. But I'm like determined. I want a big tip. That's the prize. You get a big tip. But so, you know, I think my point is I don't think, except for Denise, of course, I don't think it comes naturally to most people, and I think it's something that you have to work at. And it comes to paying attention, it comes to caring about the person, and it comes to listening. You know, employing those three things in these situations, that certainly helps. And then, you know, if their name's Kelly and they happen to be wearing a green sweater, that helps too.
But I love this Lumosity idea because I think I want like a tool that I can take and use. So I'm going to try that. I think that is definitely what I was looking for, was like something I can do to try to get better at this. And I will say right now, if I see any of the 800 of you, and I hope I'll see all of you who are joining us on this call at boot camp, and you come up and you say, hey, Marcella, and you see this blank look in my eyes, please know I am desperately trying to get a 50-year-old synapse to fire in my brain so I can say hello back. I want to close our teaching quotes part of this with a little mini copywriting lesson here that you guys can do at home on your own. And then we'll open it up for a few questions. I think Rebecca's going to help us feed in some questions into this process too. But so I'm going to end by saying, again, those of you who have the edition, if you have the Celebrating 70 Years in Print edition, if you go to the preface, it's called How This Book Was Written and Why by Dale Carnegie, and it's pages Roman numeral to Roman numeral. You will see that the entire preface functions like a mini sales letter for reading the rest of the book. And to me, I thought this was a really fantastic lesson.
It's a work of art. It's a work of art.
It is. I mean, I think just hand copying, Katie, don't you think just hand copying the intro would be a great way to lock these lessons into your brain?
Yep. And the lesson in this intro, which I think applies to every single thing we do, the more you get out of this book, the more you get out of life. It's so true for this book. But the more you get out of any of our programs that you're taking, the more you get out of life. The more you get out of this book club, the more you get out of the conversation you're going to have with your family at dinner tonight. The more you get out, just being present and participating. You know, it's just the key to everything. But I love this assignment, Marcella. I think there's so many lessons in this intro.
So everybody, I want you to look at your intro. You can hand copy it, and then when you go back through it, I want you to do, and this is a fantastic lesson. Isn't this in the first course, Katie, remind me where you actually have to go through the copy and you mark, here's where they're
the
overcoming
accelerated program.
objections.
Oh yeah, no, that's still part of the drill.
And that's the first. Say again which program that's part of.
The accelerated program.
The accelerated.
Your copywriting. Yep.
So I want you guys to try the same exercise from the accelerated course on this. So I want you to point out, where does he credentialize his subjects? Where does he make a promise of what you're going to get? Where does he have social proof because he's listing, you know, famous people? Where does he give the promise of the benefits? Where does he point out skepticism? So I want you to look at that, and that's your little sort of mini homework assignment. And I think it's a great way to wrap up our talk on the book. I'm going to let you take this one, Rebecca.
Okay, sure. And for those of you who we are going to open it up for questions and comments. So if you have anything posted in the Q&A box, even if it's just a comment that you want to share, by all means, it doesn't have to be a question. So go ahead and post them now. And in the meantime, you know, in reading this book, and we were talking a little bit before we actually turned the recording on, so those of you who are listening to the recording might be a little bit confused as to some of the references we made. But all of us agree that this book is such a valuable tool for life in general, not just with work, but with family and friends and children, all of it. But when you think about it with regards to building your business, you know, so many of these chapters can and should be used when building your business and working with clients and other copywriters. For me, and I've talked about this before, I think being likable goes a really long way. When I first read the title of this book when I was younger, I thought, oh gosh, that just seems like such a manipulative thing. It must be a sales type book, a manipulative thing. But really, it all comes down to being likable. And that was one of the things my mom taught me when I was very young in business. She just said, you know, you need to get along with people. It's going to take you a lot further in business a lot of the times, just being likable. I work with all levels of copywriters, and I can tell you honestly that for some of my writers, they may not be the best, but I enjoy working with them, so I am more than happy to put in a little bit of extra work. And, you know, now that I read this book again, I'm wondering if they put some of these good practices to work on me. And maybe that's why, because they are so likable, I'm willing to work with them more on their copy. On the flip side, I've also let some really great A-level copywriters go simply because I found them difficult and argumentative to work with. Maybe, like I said earlier, maybe I should send them a copy of this book with some sections highlighted. But I think you have a lot of power in your hands if you are likable. So be likable, smile, think about what's in it for them, and you know, genuinely care about other people. And remember, this book gives you so much power. You know what makes the other person tick. You know what makes them want to do business with you and what can turn them off. So think about what's in it for them. Think about the common goal, which is normally when it comes to building your business, it's for your client to sell more. That goal is the same. Ask questions. Make the client talk to you, and then listen, both when you're pitching clients and when you're working on the copy. Not only will it help you land more clients, but it will greatly help you when actually sitting down to write the copy. So I recommend everyone goes back through. I personally created my own cheat sheet from this course from this book. I took all the principles out and then wrote my own notes of how it applies to me and the things that I need to work on most in my own business world, and I have it in my office now. So you guys got this. You've got this really great resource and this really great power if you think of it. And so I hope everybody uses it to grow their businesses.
And just one thing we touched on this, and Dale certainly weaves this throughout the whole book, and it's just one of the things I really love about it and speaks to me is like, try leaving a friendly trail of little sparks of gratitude on your daily trips.
I love that.
What a wonderful way to live.
Yeah.
You know, and think of that, not, you know, in your personal life, in your business life, in your writing, all of that. You know, it just transcends everything else.
Should we actually, before we go into introducing, should we open it up for a few comments and questions? I know we have the slide later.
Yeah, you know what? Let's announce next week's book, or next month's book, and announce the winner.
Don't give me a heart attack.
and then we'll have a conversation. We'll have a anybody that has any comments at all, and just tell us if you've liked this. If this is this is our first time, and we're excited about it, but we want it to be really useful and enjoyable for you. So we're anxious for your feedback.
Absolutely,
yes,
I'm
Marcella,
glad you said that.
Tell us what you have lined up for next month. It's going to be amazing.
So next month we are going to have as our special guest Clayton Makepeace, and some of you who were at, yeah, I know, I am so excited. Like I said, Clayton I could listen to him read his grocery list and be entertained, I swear. He's so fun. And the man speaks in metaphors, so we're going to put that to the test next time too. But he is going to join us to talk about how to write a good advertisement by Victor Schwab. And this is a great book because not only does it teach you how to write great copy, but it's loaded with these sort of checklists that you can use when you're stuck, 100 headlines and 5 ways to do this and 6 ways to do that. And in fact, Clayton actually took this book and made some fantastic checklists for the people who came to his mini seminar that we had in Florida, in Sarasota, right? So, I'm super excited that he's going to join us. We're going to do that on July 17th. This is not a large book. There's a ton of information in it, but it's not like 700 pages, people. So again, we've picked something you can easily read between now and July 17th. Once again, I'm going to encourage you to highlight things, circle things, your favorite phrases, your favorite quotes, put them on the Facebook page. If you're on this call and you weren't on the Facebook page, go ahead and join us on the Facebook page, and so that we can get the conversation going even before the call and after the call. I think that's all we have to say about that. This is what Clayton said when we asked him to join us for this book, and I thought this was just killer.
And
this is what he said to Katie.
He wanted to do, right, Marcella?
Oh, yeah,
said, I'll
yeah.
do it, but it's got to be this book.
Yes, and Katie, maybe you can just read this off because this was the email he sent to you, right?
Sure. Because I asked him, why specifically this book, and he said, when I was first hired as a copywriter back in the 1970s, I wasn't really sure what direct response was, let alone understand the principles or rules for creating compelling sales copy. To remedy this situation, my new boss simply handed me a copy of How to Write a Good Advertisement. In the days that followed, Mr. Schwab made me a copywriter. We often talk about how the masters created this art and science of ours. We speak of David Ogilvy, Robert Collier, and many others. For Clayton, Victor Schwab packs more copywriting wisdom into a single page than any of them, and that is saying a lot.
Yeah, if that does not get you reading the book, I don't know what would ever do it, right? Here you've got another A-list writer saying this is the best thing he did to learn how to write copy. So we are going to dig deep into that book, and we will be looking for more copywriting lessons next month. We have our July book winners.
Yes.
Jennifer,
I guess I'm going to probably butcher these names, which I think is a rule that Dale would not approve of, but congratulations.
I know, I'm cringing.
Congratulations to Jennifer Mizak, Turpa Gross, Ken Thong, Audrey Guana, Charles Tate, Sandy Espinoza, Nancy Ross Brewer.
Yay.
Oh, yeah, Magda. I'm not touching that, Magna. And this is coming from a Yeakle, so my name gets mispronounced all the time. Sheldon Lazaro and TJ Baker. Look for those smiling boxes coming from Amazon your way in the next week or so. So congratulations.
Oh, that's terrific.
And now everybody who's signed up for the July call, and everybody who's already registered. Once you register, you're registered. But anybody new that signs up for July, you'll be entered into the drawing for the August book.
And you can win again and again.
I love it. There's no limit to the amount of books you could win.
No.
No. And looking ahead, the books and experts that Marcella has lined up is quite impressive. But let's
Can I go ahead and ask a couple questions in comments? Somebody wants to know what made you choose this book, Marcella, as the first one?
You know, I think for me, it's that it was so engaging and it had these rich stories in it. And one of the things I struggle with in my copy is I can be very left-brained and I can be very flat and pedantic in my copy, and it kind of gets really dry. And so I knew that rereading and digging into this book would get that energy coming back up again. It would get me thinking about metaphor and simile, which is one of the things I'm trying to infuse into my copy. And so that's why I picked this one to start with. And as soon as I had suggested it, and Katie and I were looking at a list of, you know, dozens and dozens of books, she lit up and said, oh, I really love this one too. As a parent, I love it. So it was just sort of like the stars aligned. And I knew it was a fun one to begin with. Like this isn't something where you have to like dig deep and you know, put on your quant jock glasses and try to understand some kind of marketing test, right? This is just common sense wisdom that can totally change not just your copywriting but your life. And so for me, it had a win-win on so many levels.
Everyone is just saying all these wonderful things about the book club.
Yeah.
One interesting thing from Sean Moss, he just wrote while we were talking about things earlier, always start with why. There's a great TED Talk about how to start with why, and a book by the speaker, Simon Sinek. It might be another book we want to read. It's very helpful for copywriters. I've actually seen that TED Talk, and I agree with him. So it might be a book, Marcella, possibly for a future discussion.
Yes, you know, why don't we do this too? Why don't we ask folks to post on our Facebook page other book suggestions? And or you can email them to me. I'm keeping the list, which as Katie can tell you is growing exponentially. Every time we talk about one book, Katie and Rebecca and I come up with about 12 others to add to this. So you can also email me at allmarcella@gmail.com and just please put in your subject line, great books suggestion, and I will add that to the ongoing list of books. So it's allmarcella@gmail.com and put the Great Books Club or Great Book Suggestion, something in the headline like that, subject line, sorry, and I will add that. So please keep those suggestions coming because as many books as we found, there are hundreds more out there.
And for those of you looking to join us on Facebook, it looks like we're setting up a different event for each one. But if you just search for AWI Great Books, you'll find the book club there. And I'll also
okay, so they can find the July one that way. Okay.
Yep. If you search, we'll go ahead and every time we set up a new event, we'll post the link on the last one to the next one, or the most recent one will show up first if it's already past the date of the last event. Also, Marcella, are we going to reveal the future list of books, or are we going to reveal them 1 month at a time?
Well, we can tell you a few of them, right, Katie? Do you want to just talk us through? Good.
Yep. We have, I think we're through October, correct?
Yes, we are. So let's see, we could probably do this together, right? So next month is Clayton with How to Write a Good Advertisement.
Which there was a question on that one too, which version of the book. It looks like there are 2 different editions. One.
Okay, I'll tell you the one I've got. I have the one that's the green one that looks exactly like what showed up there.
One is with just Victor Schwab and the other one is with Robert. I'm sorry.
The one by just Victor Schwab, the original.
So it's the full title, How to Write a Good Advertisement, not How to Write a Good Ad by Robert and Victor.
No. It's How to Write a Good Advertisement, a short course in copywriting by Victor O. Schwab, and it's green and glowing orange. So that's next month.
Then in August, we'll be, this is going to be great, Ogilvy on Advertising with David Deutsch. Who's
my mentor, one of my favorite people in the whole world who worked with Ogilvy.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Then in September, it's The War of Art with Nick Osborne.
And I asked Nick to do that because, one, I love The War of Art. Actually, we had a whole little chain going on Facebook earlier today when I announced that with some of us who love that book and are passionate about it. And one of the things I love about that book is he talks about writing rituals and the way to use them to get to your desk and get to the page each day. And if you struggle with procrastination, like I will freely admit, hello, my name is Marcella Allison, and I struggle constantly with procrastination because of fear and resistance. This book, The War of Art, is like my Bible for trying to overcome that, using like rituals and repeating the same actions every morning to get me into the copy. And Nick wrote a killer report about that, and so I asked him if he would come and join us, and we're going to start off the conversation with that, and then I know it'll go in a million different directions, and so I'm super excited about that one, and that one's September. And then the biggie for October, drum roll.
We're actually, we're going to do book club live at boot camp. So
if you haven't signed up, sign up now.
It's going to be pretty amazing. And Richard Armstrong is the guest. And what book? I forget the book. I forget the title.
We're doing Scientific Advertising and My Life in Advertising.
Yeah.
And Roy is going to join us.
Yeah.
And he's actually going to post for us. Roy recorded the book. It's free. It's in the public domain. You can download it to your computer, and he actually made an audio tape of it. What do you want to say? Recording of it. So if you're someone who wants to listen while you're walking, I asked him if he'd be willing to share that, and he said that he would. And so as we get a little bit closer.
Everybody's been so generous about this. But that's going to be fun.
I love it.
Because that'll be, there'll be a little bit more interaction since, whoever's at boot camp will be able to participate. We'll all be sitting around together. And if you're not at boot camp, we'll stream you in. But if you're going to be at boot camp or, if you can come to boot camp, this is just one more reason to be there.
Oh, I think it would be great. And you know what? It would be a killer place for all of us to start throwing out the names of our favorite books from October on. I mean, that's what better place for us to brainstorm the kind of books we want to read.
Oh, that would be fun. That would be really fun.
Because really what Katie and Rebecca and I want more than anything is for this to be for you. For all of you, it's why it's free. It's why we wanted to do this, to give back and to give you something with no expectation in return other than enjoying learning with us and studying the masters and perfecting our craft. And I hope that this book club and this conversation will just go forever, right? Because we're never going to run out of books that have lessons for life and for copy. And I love having the conversation. I love having people engaged, and I love looking for those deeper lessons. It's what allows me to then make them part of my toolkit, because just by being on the call, I drive home those lessons. And I know, Katie, before we came on the call, we were talking about this idea of always starting with your prospect in mind. And for me, this is exactly what you guys have done with this. You have started with us in mind and given us something just for free to build community and help us become better writers. And I'm just so excited that you asked me to be part of it.
Well, we are too. And believe me, it's great for us to revisit these books and learn. I haven't read our Art of War, so I'm very excited about that. And, there's always opportunities to learn. And we are so grateful that we're in a position to be able to facilitate this. And Marcella, we're thrilled to have you drive in the car.
Oh, thanks. And thanks, Katie and Rebecca, for joining me. I think we really kicked this off to a good start with lots of good ideas that folks can take away from how to win friends and influence people. I hope we'll keep this conversation going.
We will. Thank you.
Definitely.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next month for Victor Schwab's How to Write a Good Advertisement with